On February 10, 2025, Elon Musk made headlines with his support for auditing the Federal Reserve, advocating for a transparency initiative led by former Congressman Ron Paul. This proposal sparked extensive discussions across social media and various news platforms, highlighting Musk's increasing focus on the operations and accountability of the central bank.
Overview of the event.
Musk's endorsement came in a post on the social media platform X, where he expressed enthusiasm for the idea of Ron Paul heading an audit team under the Department of Government Efficiency. This move aligns with Paul's long-standing advocacy for scrutinizing the Federal Reserve, a position he has championed for decades.
Paul has consistently argued that the Federal Reserve's operations lack transparency and contribute to economic issues like monetary inflation, which he believes adversely affects American interests. Key themes and reactions.
1. Support for greater accountability. Musk's call for an audit underscores a growing sentiment among certain segments of the public and policymakers regarding the need for increased accountability from the Federal Reserve. His comments resonated with those who share concerns about the central bank's influence on the economy and its decision-making processes. 2. Ron Paul's potential leadership role. The suggestion that Ron Paul could lead the audit initiative was a focal point of Musk's proposal. Paul, known for his libertarian views and criticism of the Federal Reserve,
would bring a wealth of experience and a critical perspective to the audit.
Musk's expression of support for Paul as a potential leader reflects his admiration for Paul's economic principles and his historical criticism of the Fed.
3. Transparency issues. Both Musk and Paul emphasized the need for enhanced transparency in the Federal Reserve's operations.
Their concerns revolve around the complexity of monetary policy and the perceived opacity in how the Fed conducts its business, which they argue can lead to mismanagement and economic instability. Public reception and media coverage.
The reactions to Musk's statements were swift and varied. Following his posts on X, there was a notable increase in dialogue surrounding the Federal Reserve's accountability. Many users expressed support for Musk and Paul's ideas, suggesting a grassroots backing for the initiative.
The media coverage varied in focus, with some outlets highlighting the implications for the stock market and public sentiment, while others delved deeper into the economic and political ramifications of such an audit. Business Insider reported on the potential stock market implications and the general public reaction to Musk's statements, emphasizing the growing concern about the Federal Reserve's decision-making. Seeking Alpha provided a more detailed analysis of the potential economic impact of an audit, discussing how it could influence monetary policy and public trust in the central bank. Binance News showcased Musk's social media interactions and the grassroots support for his ideas, emphasizing the conversation among users regarding the audit and Paul's potential role.
Timeline of events.
1. February 10, 2025. Musk's comments about auditing the Federal Reserve and considering Ron Paul as a leader of this audit surfaced on social media, igniting widespread discussion. 2. Public dialogue. Following Musk's posts, many users began to engage in conversations about the need for increased scrutiny of the Federal Reserve, reflecting a growing public interest in the topic. 3. Ongoing developments. The conversation around the audit continues to evolve, raising questions about how Musk's proposals might influence public policy and the broader discourse on monetary policy.
Conclusion. Elon Musk's endorsement of auditing the Federal Reserve, coupled with his suggestion that Ron Paul lead this effort, marks a significant moment in the ongoing discourse on financial transparency and accountability.
This initiative has the potential to reshape discussions surrounding the Federal Reserve's role in the U.S. economy, aligning with long-standing criticisms from libertarian circles and advocates for economic reform.
As conversations continue, the implications of Musk's proposals may resonate throughout the political and economic landscape,
prompting further scrutiny of the central bank's operations. Elon Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve and his suggestion that Ron Paul should lead this effort present a counterintuitive perspective within the context of mainstream economic discourse.
Here are some of the key points of counterintuitive information stemming from this situation.
1. Musk as a critic of established institutions. Traditionally, tech entrepreneurs like Musk are viewed as disruptors who seek to innovate and progress rather than critique established financial institutions. However, Musk's active support for auditing the Federal Reserve aligns him with libertarian critiques that question the very foundations of monetary policy, a stance not commonly expected from someone of his stature in the tech industry. 2. Alignment with libertarian ideals. Ron Paul's persistent critique of the Federal Reserve, rooted in libertarian economic theory, suggests that government intervention in monetary policy is detrimental. Musk's endorsement of auditing the Federal Reserve signals a surprising convergence between a billionaire tech mogul and a long-standing libertarian politician. This collaboration could challenge the conventional wisdom that wealthy elites inherently support centralized economic control. 3. Public perception of the Federal Reserve. Musk's comments may seem to reflect a populist sentiment against elite institutions. While many business leaders typically advocate for the stability provided by institutions like the Federal Reserve, Musk's call for transparency implies a belief that such institutions can operate without adequate oversight. This could resonate with a public increasingly skeptical of governmental and financial institutions, countering the narrative that such skepticism is confined to fringe economic theories. 4. Potential political ramifications. Musk's endorsement of Ron Paul could also have unintended consequences in the political arena. While it may galvanize grassroots support for auditing the Federal Reserve, it could also alienate more centrist or establishment figures in both politics and economics. This dynamic introduces a potentially disruptive element to the traditional bipartisan consensus on monetary policy, suggesting that the support of a high-profile figure like Musk could elevate fringe ideas into mainstream discussions. 5. Impact on economic policy discourse. Musk's advocacy for scrutiny of the Federal Reserve departs from the common narrative that central banks should be insulated from political pressures to maintain economic stability. By suggesting an audit, Musk is challenging the notion that independence is synonymous with effectiveness, positioning the audit as a necessary measure for ensuring accountability. This perspective could shift the discourse from one focused solely on economic outcomes to one also concerned with governance and ethical considerations. 6. Grassroots movements versus elite advocacy. Musk's use of social media to promote the idea of auditing the Federal Reserve exemplifies how grassroots movements can gain traction through the support of influential figures. This contrasts with traditional lobbying efforts by elite financial interests, suggesting that the balance of influence may be shifting. The rise of social media platforms allows for the rapid dissemination of ideas that might otherwise remain sidelined, potentially leading to significant shifts in public policy. 7. Challenges to economic orthodoxy. Musk's position could be seen as a challenge to the prevailing economic orthodoxy that accepts the Federal Reserve's role in managing inflation and economic stability. By aligning with Ron Paul's vision of a more limited government role in economics, Musk is promoting a radical re-evaluation of accepted economic practices, which may provoke debate among economists who typically support robust central bank intervention. In conclusion, Elon Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve, coupled with his endorsement of Ron Paul, presents a multifaceted, counterintuitive narrative that intertwines populist sentiments, libertarian critiques, and the evolving landscape of economic discourse. It highlights the potential for influential figures to reshape discussions around financial institutions' accountability and the role of government in economic policy. Elon Musk's recent endorsement of auditing the Federal Reserve and his suggestion that Ron Paul lead this initiative is a significant development that touches on various aspects of economic policy, public trust in financial institutions, and political discourse. While much of the media coverage has focused on Musk's celebrity status and the implications for public opinion, several important elements in this discussion are likely to be overlooked by the general audience. Here are some of these overlooked aspects and their significance. 1. Historical context of auditing the Federal Reserve. The call for auditing the Federal Reserve is not a new idea. it has been a topic of discussion among economists and politicians for decades, particularly among libertarians.
Ron Paul has long been a vocal advocate for greater transparency within the Federal Reserve, arguing that its operations contribute to economic instability and inflation.
The significance of Musk's endorsement lies in how it brings renewed attention to a long-standing critique that has not been fully addressed by mainstream economic policy discussions. Auditing the Fed could lead to a re-evaluation of its practices, potentially influencing monetary policy decisions that affect every American.
2. Implications for monetary policy.
The Federal Reserve's monetary policy has far-reaching consequences for the economy, affecting inflation rates, employment levels, and overall economic growth.
By endorsing an audit, Musk suggests a potential shift in how monetary policies are formulated and implemented.
This could lead to a more cautious approach to quantitative easing and interest rate adjustments, strategies that have been criticized for creating asset bubbles and widening economic inequality. The significance here is that an audit could empower policymakers to consider alternative economic models that prioritize long-term stability over short-term gains.
3. Grassroots support and political capital. Musk's influence as a public figure means that his endorsement could galvanize grassroots movements advocating for economic reform.
Social media interactions regarding his support for Ron Paul indicate a burgeoning community of individuals who resonate with the call for greater accountability from the Federal Reserve.
This grassroots support is crucial because it can translate into political pressure on lawmakers to consider auditing the Fed seriously.
The significance of this movement lies in its potential to reshape political priorities and bring economic reform to the forefront of public policy discussions.
4. Broader economic discourse.
Musk's comments contribute to a broader discourse around the legitimacy of central banking in a capitalist economy.
While many view the Federal Reserve as a necessary institution to ensure economic stability,
others, particularly within libertarian circles, argue that it operates without sufficient oversight. The significance of this debate is that it challenges the status quo and encourages a re-evaluation of the roles and responsibilities of central banks in modern economies. By endorsing an audit, Musk is not only advocating for transparency but also inviting a broader discussion about the legitimacy and effectiveness of current economic systems. 5. Potential for legislative change.
Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve could lead to legislative initiatives aimed at reforming how the central bank operates.
If Ron Paul were to assume a leadership role in this effort, it could bring a new perspective to the discussion, emphasizing the need for accountability and transparency. The significance of this potential change is that it could inspire lawmakers to draft new legislation aimed at reforming the Federal Reserve's practices, potentially leading to significant shifts in monetary policy.
6. Economic education and public awareness.
By publicly discussing the need for an audit of the Federal Reserve, Musk raises awareness about the complexities of monetary policy and the central banking system among the general public. This could encourage more individuals to educate themselves about economic issues and become more engaged in discussions about fiscal policy. The significance of increasing public awareness cannot be understated. An informed electorate is crucial for a functioning democracy, particularly when it comes to economic decisions that affect everyday life. 7. The role of celebrity influence in economic discussions. Musk's involvement in advocating for auditing the Federal Reserve highlights the role of celebrity influence in shaping public discourse. His status can draw attention to issues that might otherwise be overlooked or marginalized. The significance here is twofold. It demonstrates how influential figures can mobilize public interest in complex issues and also raises questions about the implications of celebrity involvement in serious economic discussions. This dynamic can lead to both positive and negative outcomes depending on how the discourse evolves.
Conclusion.
Elon Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve and the proposition of Ron Paul leading this initiative are significant developments that warrant deeper examination. The historical context implications for monetary policy grassroots support
and potential for legislative change emphasize the importance of this discussion in shaping future economic and political landscapes. By focusing on these overlooked aspects, we can better understand the potential ramifications of Musk's statements and the broader implications for financial transparency and accountability in the U.S. economy.
1. Musk's advocacy for accountability. Elon Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve underscores a broader demand for transparency and accountability in financial institutions. His call for an audit reflects growing public skepticism about the Federal Reserve's operations and decisions,
particularly concerning issues like inflation and economic inequality. This point opens up discussions on the implications of a transparent central banking system and how it could affect investor confidence and economic stability.
2. Ron Paul's economic philosophy. The suggestion that Ron Paul should lead the audit initiative highlights his long-standing critiques of the Federal Reserve's policies. Paul has consistently argued for a more limited role of the central bank and greater scrutiny of its practices. Analyzing Paul's economic philosophy provides insight into libertarian perspectives on monetary policy, and it raises important questions about the balance between government oversight and free market principles. 3. Public and political reactions. The public's response to Musk's statements has been significant, with many expressing support for both Musk's call for an audit and the potential appointment of Ron Paul. This grassroots enthusiasm indicates a growing movement advocating for reform within the Federal Reserve and central banking systems in general. Analyzing these reactions can shed light on shifting public attitudes toward monetary policy and the credibility of the Federal Reserve. 4. Potential economic implications. The discussion surrounding Musk's proposal and the audit's potential impact on the Federal Reserve invites an analysis of the broader economic consequences.
Would increased transparency lead to more informed policy decisions? Could it result in changes to monetary policy that might stabilize or destabilize the economy? Exploring these questions can lead to deeper insights into the relationship between central banking practices and macroeconomic stability.
These points not only highlight the significance of Musk's statements but also frame a broader discourse on financial transparency and the role of central banks in shaping economic outcomes. 1. The Audit the Fed Movement 2008 present. This ongoing movement advocates for increased transparency and accountability of the Federal Reserve. It gained traction during the financial crisis of 2008 when many Americans expressed frustration over the Fed's secretive practices and the perception that it acted in favor of large banks rather than the general public.
The movement has seen prominent figures,
including Ron Paul, champion for an audit of the Federal Reserve, leading to the introduction of several bills in Congress aimed at increasing oversight of the central bank. 2. The Gold Standard Debate 1930s. The debate surrounding the United States' abandonment of the gold standard in the 1930s serves as a historical parallel to contemporary discussions about Federal Reserve transparency and accountability.
Advocates for the gold standard argued that it provided a stable currency and prevented government overreach in monetary policy.
The economic turmoil of the Great Depression led to significant discussions about monetary policy, ultimately resulting in President Franklin D. Roosevelt's decision to abandon the gold standard to allow for more flexible monetary policy. 3. The Glass-Steagall Act repeal 1999. The repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, which had separated commercial and investment banking since the Great Depression, is another historical case that highlights the consequences of deregulation in the financial sector. The Act's repeal was justified by proponents as a means to create a more competitive financial environment. However, critics argue that it contributed to the financial crisis of 2008 by enabling risky banking practices. The calls for reinstating Glass-Steagall and increasing regulation of financial institutions echo the current sentiments surrounding the need for oversight of the Federal Reserve and its impact on the economy. Elon Musk's recent push for auditing the Federal Reserve alongside his endorsement of Ron Paul as a potential leader for this initiative marks a significant moment in the ongoing discourse surrounding financial transparency and accountability in the U.S. monetary system. As we look to the future, several predictions can be made regarding the implications of this movement. Increased public discourse on Federal Reserve accountability. The call for an audit of the Federal Reserve is likely to spark heightened public interest and discussion regarding the central bank's role in the economy. Given Musk's substantial influence, this could lead to increased scrutiny from both the media and the general public. We may see more forums, debates, and educational resources focused on explaining the complexities of the Federal Reserve's operations and its impact on everyday Americans. Political ramifications. Musk's support could galvanize political movements aimed at reforming the Federal Reserve. Aligning with Ron Paul's long-standing libertarian views on monetary policy, this push may attract support from a diverse array of political groups, including libertarians, conservatives, and even some progressives who prioritize transparency in government institutions. Future congressional hearings or proposals may emerge, advocating for greater oversight and potential legislative reforms related to the Federal Reserve's practices. Economic implications. Should an audit of the Federal Reserve gain traction, it could lead to significant shifts in monetary policy. Advocates like Ron Paul argue that increased transparency could help prevent monetary inflation and stabilize the economy. This could lead to a re-evaluation of existing policies, including interest rates and quantitative easing measures. Financial markets may react to these changes with potential volatility as investors adjust their expectations based on new information or shifts in policy frameworks. Rise of alternative monetary theories. The audit discussion may also pave the way for alternative economic theories to gain visibility. Ideas such as cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, DeFi, and sound money principles could see increased interest as individuals and groups seek alternatives to the current monetary system. This could lead to a broader acceptance of digital currencies and innovations aimed at reducing reliance on traditional banking systems. Enhanced role for technology in monetary policy. Musk, known for his interest in technology and innovation, may inspire a technological approach to auditing and improving the Federal Reserve's transparency. This could involve the use of blockchain technology for real-time tracking of monetary policy decisions and their effects on the economy. Such advancements might help bridge the gap between the public and policymakers, fostering a more informed citizenry. Potential challenges and opposition. While the movement for auditing the Federal Reserve may gain momentum, it will likely face resistance from established financial institutions and policymakers who argue that the current system provides necessary stability. Critics may assert that an audit could undermine the Federal Reserve's independence and effectiveness, leading to political interference in monetary policy. The debate surrounding these issues could become a defining aspect of economic discussions in the coming years. Conclusion. In summary, Elon Musk's support for auditing the Federal Reserve and his suggestion for Ron Paul to lead this initiative could have far-reaching implications for public discourse, political movements, economic policy, and the future of monetary systems in the United States. As discussions evolve, the outcome will depend on the ability of advocates to mobilize support and navigate the complexities of the financial landscape, ultimately shaping the future of the Federal Reserve and its role in the economy.